The Israel-Iran war is here. It was long expected. For many days, the anticipation had been building up that this war could take place anytime, and that moment is upon us. Trump has said that this will be a moment for the people of Iran to take back their government. But does that mean that these strikes, jointly coordinated between Israel and the United States, are aimed very clearly at regime change? And how will that regime change, in fact, be ensured? Are the Americans and the Israelis ready to go all in? Would that mean not just attacks from the air, but also a ground war? And remember, this is already a regional conflict. Missiles have been intercepted and sighted over the skies of Dubai, Riyadh, Abu Dhabi, and Bahrain. In fact, Emirates Airlines has suspended temporarily operations into and out of Dubai. Every country around the world, but particularly the countries in West Asia, including us here in India, will have to take a delicate position, walk a delicate tightrope walk. Remember, the Israel strikes on Iran come just days after Prime Minister Modi met with Netanyahu in Israel. There are questions for not just us in India, but as I mentioned, for all the countries in our neighborhood, including Pakistan, which has been trying to build a sort of relationship of flattery and closeness with Donald Trump, but will also face political questions at home on how it responds to this attack on Iran while it's battling a military battle or a conflict with Afghanistan on its border. I'm Barkha, you're with the Mojo story. On the program today, we try and make sense of what might happen next in the Israel-Iran war. A war where Trump has declared that the end goal is clear: regime change. He addressed the people of Iran directly and said, "You have always asked for American help. Well, that help is here, and you will be able to take control of your own destinies, of your own government." But is it easier said than done? Iran is not Venezuela, and it may be a battle that will need more than aerial strikes. That said, those strikes have been ongoing all day, and Iran has hit back with retaliatory strikes as well. So missiles have been flying over the entire region of West Asia, what the Americans call the Middle East. In fact, one person is reported to have been killed in the UAE. In the meantime, Iran's official media is saying that one of the targets hit in these strikes has been a girls' school, and they are saying that 36 to 40 female students are now reported killed in those strikes in Iran. It's going to be a few days before absolutely verifiable information is available for us. It is what is called the fog of war. But in the meantime, let's try and make sense of it all. Let me introduce our three very distinguished guests today. We're joined by veteran diplomat, Ambassador TCA Raghavan. Welcome to the program, sir. From Israel today, we're joined by Helit Barrel. She's been a former director at the Israel National Security Council. It's good to see you, ma'am. And also joining us is military veteran, former General Office Commanding of the 15th Corps, General Atta Hasnain. I'd like to start by playing out a very clear, specific statement from Donald Trump, and then we can kick off our conversation. Take a look.
To the great, proud people of Iran, I say tonight that the hour of your freedom is at hand. Stay sheltered. Don't leave your home. It's very dangerous outside. Bombs will be dropping everywhere. When we are finished, take over your government. It will be yours to take. This will be probably your only chance for generations. For many years, you have asked for America's help, but you never got it. No president was willing to do what I am willing to do tonight. Now you have a president who is giving you what you want. So let's see how you respond. America is backing you with overwhelming strength and devastating force. Now is the time to seize control of your destiny and to unleash the prosperous and glorious future that is close within your reach. This is the moment for action. Do not let it pass. May God bless the brave men and women of America's armed forces. May God bless the United States of America. May God bless you all. Thank you.
Now, for anyone who thought that Trump likes being cinematic, that maybe the aim of these strikes coordinated between Israel and the US, Trump has made it clear there that the aim is clearly to either oust or kill members of the current regime, because he said very clearly, Helet, if I may start with you, that this is going to be a moment where the people of Iran can take back or take control of their government. Am I right in reading it that way? Because earlier there was an interpretation that these could be symbolic strikes, that the aim is to get Iran to the negotiating table. We are already seeing the entire region of what we in India call West Asia, what the rest of the world calls the Middle East, impacted by this, engulfed by this. The Emirates, perhaps, for first time in years, has stopped all flights into Dubai. We've seen Abu Dhabi, Riyadh, Bahrain, all see missiles fly over their skies. We see Iran saying that a school has been hit and 36 of their school girls have perished. That's what their state media is saying. What is the end goal here, ma'am?
Well, for weeks, we weren't really exposed to the end goals as far as Donald Trump was concerned. And then, as you said, he said very clearly, finally, in the speech, that it is about regime change, toppling the regime. Now, how you do that from strikes from the air, naval strikes, and so on remains a question for me. Of course, there will be great impact to the actions already taken today. And as you mentioned, just from the opening move by the United States, we can see that it will not be symbolic. It's gone beyond that, and that very high members of this regime have been targeted. We don't know yet if it is successful or not, but clearly the message is there. So since we still don't see the troops on the ground scenario playing out, because those troops have not arrived physically, then it will be at least, I think, for the next week, very intense to see where it unfolds, with a lot of military targets still on the list for both the United States and Israel.
May I ask you, before I open it up to my colleagues from India, what is the situation in Israel right now? I mean, is it sirens everywhere? Has everybody been asked to stay indoors, hunker down? What's happening?
Well, of course, it's very intense, and we are all to remain within not safe spaces, but in proximity to safe spaces. So you're not going to see people out in the streets. This is not a regular weekend in Tel Aviv. So certainly there have been a lot of alarms throughout different areas of the country, and people are prepared for this scenario and have been for weeks now. Mind you, this is our second round because we went through this in June of 2025. So yes, it's a very, very tense situation. But as you know, Israeli population is extremely well prepared for this, and also has been through it once, of course. And we expect it to be prolonged. We expect it to last for more than a day or two or three or four. And that's the outlook. At the moment, very kind of tense anticipation. No big events here in terms of what we have suffered back from Iran yet.
Thank you for those opening comments. Ambassador Raghavan, if I may bring you in. There are questions for almost every country. For us in India, these strikes have taken place, just a handful of days after Prime Minister Modi was in Israel meeting with Benjamin Netanyahu. We have questions for the entire region, as I mentioned. Pakistan itself will have to walk somewhat of a trapeze act here. Yet Iran is not Venezuela, and Israel and Donald Trump probably both know that. There have been reports that the Trump administration was in two minds about actually going ahead with these strikes. How do you see this playing out?
Certainly surprising that these strikes took place, because the impression which was being conveyed was that there was a diplomatic process which was making good progress between Iran and the United States. But clearly the accumulation of forces such as there has been in the last month itself creates a new objective reality. And I think the Americans were presented with a choice, and that choice was that degrading in the first instance Iranian military capacities very significantly. And that was too good an option, too good an opportunity to miss, possibly in their thinking. The subsidiary objective now may well be some kind of regime change or to land some punishing blows on the higher echelons of the Iranian leadership. How this will play out, I don't think anyone quite knows. Because, as you say, Iran is not Venezuela, and the government of Iran, although it is admittedly now at its weakest than at any time in the past 4 decades, certainly has huge reservoirs of support also. Because while intense opposition exists, there are also there is also deep support for the Iranian government because of its very nature. It is a participatory kind of system that exists. So how this will play out, we don't know. What is evident is that, yes, its military capacities will possibly be significantly degraded, and especially its capacity with regard to missiles. But beyond that, we don't really know whether there will be a larger political change domestically within Iran, what kind of implications this has for the region. I don't think in Pakistan itself this is going to have that much of an impact, because Pakistan is going to remain absorbed with its equally difficult situation with Afghanistan. But certainly whether it leads to any kind of disruption in oil, hydrocarbon supplies from the Gulf to the rest of the world, what are Iranian capacities to fight back, all of that there's a question mark, because nobody quite knows. And as you said, we will have to wait and see once we have fuller information.
Okay, I can see, before I come to General Hasnain, Helet, I can see you wanting to have an interjection. Please go ahead. Yes.
I apologize. We just got another missile alert. I have to go shelter. So I will not be able to continue with you. Good luck to us all.
Well, please stay safe, and thank you for letting us know. I should have come to you earlier given the situation.
My
Stay safe,
apologies.
and we understand, and we hope to connect with you again. A warning there to our guest from Israel to basically take safe shelter, because sirens have gone off and a missile attack, retaliatory attack, we can assume, from Iran is incoming. General Hassan, let me come to you. I think the big question is, can regime change take place from the skies? That's what we don't know. I think it is no longer in doubt that that's what the Americans are seeking. But after being burnt in Afghanistan, being burnt in Iraq with questionable evidence to begin with, and Trump's own aversion to prolonged conflict, Trump has made a big statement today. He said that the aim is to get the government out. How easy or difficult or achievable? Forget easy or difficult. How achievable is that?
Thank you, Barkha. Thank you for inviting me for the show. Very interesting times. There was a very smart speech by Mr. Trump. Whoever wrote it for him, obviously with an intent. I'm not sure whether he speaks from prepared speeches or whether it's an impromptu thing, but it was a smart speech, conveying very clearly what the intent of the United States is. That is regime change, and asking the people to rather create an upsurge so that they can guide their own destiny in the future. Your specific question needs a military analysis. Can you have regime change from the air? Well, to launch from the air, you got to have very deep intelligence penetration, first of all, on the ground. And that's, I'm sure, in the last 2 months, while all this buildup of diplomacy has been going on in Oman and in Geneva and in Vienna and places like that, there has been a tremendous intelligence effort on the ground, which has been going on. There must have been a degree of confidence because of which this operation has been launched. And as we were talking, I think some time back, I just heard that a missile had landed in the compound of Ali Khamenei, and we don't know the whereabouts of Ali Khamenei. Although I did comment to say that Ali Khamenei is very unlikely to be above ground, sitting on a second or third floor. He would be very, very deep underground somewhere. And that is almost a definite statement. Besides the regime, the political and the ideological regime change, I'm sure the United States and Israel would also be looking at the IRGC. The IRGC has not been very secure through the last 1 year. If you see why 1 year, if you go back to Soleimani's time, from Soleimani till now, the IRGC has repeatedly lost a series of senior commanders, and they have not been able to secure them themselves. So I don't give IRGC that kind of a capability to protect its senior commanders, but definitely the political and ideological leadership would be very, very well protected. Having said that, I don't see the presence of any American ground capability. There is a special operations group which is there, special forces which is there at the moment, but there are no major marine formations that I can see on the ground which are there. So incursions are unlikely. This kind of a thing with special operations is not going to be easily done. So I think the Americans are giving away the intent very clearly that this is, well, a little beyond symbolic. This is an operation going on a little beyond symbolic. If they do not achieve their ends through missilery, through missiles and bombs and bombing and things like that, I don't think there is an option to go in beyond that.
So then,
unless they're willing to build up for it, and which they have not, definitely not indicated any
maybe the battle will be fought by, I don't know. Are they, like, if the Americans aren't willing to go the whole hog, why would Trump make such a definitive statement? Unless, General Hussain, and I'll put it the same question to Master Raghavan after this, unless the aim or the goal is the belief that the regime might step aside on its own, which yes. I don't think it would.
Absolutely, I agree with you. It would not, but definitely the attempt may be there. Coercion. You see, what I'm reading this entire conflict initiation as such as a high-level coercion, which is going on side by side with the diplomacy which has gone on so far. A high-level coercion which is going on, which is signaling to Iran that there can be much more beyond this. But I think this game has gone on for too long, and the hierarchy in Iran is also too smart. I don't think they are going to get misled on this entire thing. They are going to stick on. And therefore, I see this fizzling out in 4-5 days' time, in which little is going to be achieved except the fact that Iran may come back again to the negotiating table, which it has always been on, and just carry on again in terms of diplomacy.
Master Raghavan, do you agree with that perspective? Clearly, our Israeli guest who had to go because of retaliatory strikes from Iran thought otherwise, but that is Israel's position, and she has been in the security establishment. Do you agree with General Hussain that this is going to fizzle out, that it's a coercion tactic? Trump likes doing cinematic things. Let's also be analytical here and say that Trump would want a headline change from the Epstein files at home. His ratings are at an all-time low. He's got to have the media talking about something else. He's got to have the world talking about something else. And he's achieved that for now. Do you think this is short-term? Or do you see this as now the prolonged next sort of battle that the world is in the midst of? And I say the world because unlike Russia, Ukraine, like this is geographically going to impact many more countries.
Well, I think that their principal objective after amassing a huge force was to degrade Iranian military capacities significantly. And I think they will be quite successful in that. The subsidiary objective, which has always been there as part of US policy, is to somehow engineer some kind of change in the architecture in Iran. Now, that is not entirely in their control. What they will try to do is try to create conditions for it and hope for the best. If it doesn't happen, I think they'll be quite happy walking away with having achieved their principal objective, which is degrading Iran's military capacity very significantly. The issue in these situations always is that, militaries are good at planning their own moves. They're not very good at planning what the other person's, the opponent's moves are. What is going to be the intensity and extent of Iranian reactions? And their Iranian capacities, there's a question mark over them which did not exist 7-8 years ago. Have those external capacities in the Gulf states been significantly eroded, or whether they still exist? If those capacities exist and there is significant damage inflicted on US assets in the region, then we will be entering an even more dramatic escalatory phase. It's not easy to control what happens after you have taken the initial steps. If those capacities are exaggerated, if they have built up very strong, anti-missile grids in the entire region, the Americans are confident of protecting their assets and their allies, then perhaps the situation will end with, as I said, significant erosion of military capacities in Iran. And then gradually, perhaps after some time, they will limp back to some kind of negotiations.
Let
You
me
see,
ask.
the issue also is a generic one, because when the Americans talk about Iranians not having the capacity to build a nuclear weapon forever, what it also implies is a certain, because those capacities are not just quantitative capacities, they're also scientific capacities. You can set Iran back by 10-15 years in terms of technology, and to some extent that has always been the Israeli objective, that in terms of engineering capacities you make sure that Iran is 10, 15, 20 years away from a nuclear weapon. But their scientific and intellectual capacities remain. So that capacity always remains unchecked. And that is where the question of regime change or changing the architecture, the ruling architecture in Iran becomes so significant. And I think we are in that gray area that no one has thought the moves beyond the next, the first 3 or 4 steps.
I'm glad you brought up the nuclear question, because that was going to be my follow-up, General Hassan. Iran's nuclear program has been the subject of fierce global debate and discussion, and even sanctions for the last many years. And I think Ambassador Raghavan is correct in saying that Iran's capacity to not just defend itself but also strike back is one of the unknown sort of elements of predicting what might happen next. How do you read it? I mean, what you are seeing on your screen, for example, are Iran's retaliatory strikes hitting an American military facility in Bahrain. So, all this is going to happen. But in terms of real capacity, how do you read it?
Firstly, Barkha, the Iranian nuclear weapon capability is reported to have been degraded to a great extent in the 12-day war in June last year, which is what the Americans claim. Some of it would have probably been refurbished, but obviously Iran is still not in that stage where it has got a declared kind of a nuclear weapon capability. What Iran is definitely going to do, this current regime, is that symbolically it will retaliate to everything which is happening to it. In the sense that if there are 10, 11 bases in Iran which have been struck, it is going to strike back against an equal number of bases of the Americans in these different cities and different countries, such as in the UAE or in Qatar or places like that. And I say symbolically. Well, I don't think they're going to do it very effectively. I'm seeing a lot of photographs of burning buses in Tel Aviv and things like that. Yes, they are there. I did warn some people, be very careful. There's good psychological warfare. In today's world, imagery can be reproduced from anywhere at any time, etc. But there is going to be a tremendous amount of narrative building which is going to go on side by side along with all this which is happening at the moment, to try and put pressure either way, both ways that will happen. I don't see this stopping, but as far as the American facilities are concerned, they all have their anti-missile defense capabilities with them. Yeah. Today, when I saw this missile strike on the Israeli buses or that bus station, my first question was, how come the Israeli ballistic missile defense system is not up and about? You can't have on the very first day of the war an Iranian bomb missile coming through and landing in the middle of Tel Aviv. So there is going to be a lot of narrative things which are also going to build up simultaneously. But as I said, this exchange can carry on. I entirely agree with what Ambassador Raghavan said. at the end of whatever time duration that we see, there is going to be a huge degradation and erosion of Iran's missile capability. There's no doubt about it. Iran doesn't have an air force. There's hardly an air force with name only. Whatever it has, but in terms of its potency is missiles. And this is one of the areas where they want to particularly target. Because this is besides nuclear weapons, this is the other threat which Iran always talks about. The IRGC has essentially nuclear threats, it's got threats from missiles, and it's got threats from proxies. That is the overall doctrine which Iran follows. The proxies have been degraded, nuclear has been degraded, now the degradation of missilery. I think at the end of the day, the Americans and Israelis can claim that we have largely degraded Iran's military capability, and they can put a stop to all this.
The question, Ambassador Raghavan, is how would Trump rationalize that ending? He already claimed that in the last set of strikes that Iran had been defanged. Now he's claiming that the government, the leadership, will be toppled. He's making a very, very categorical assertion. Let me come to the tricky diplomatic question. How is and how might and how should India respond? The timing is being commented on. Indian Prime Minister Modi was just there. Netanyahu's been talking about hexagonal alliance. India has never been part of that kind of alliance. How do you think we're going to handle this?
I think, first of all, while it's an important question for us internally, the fact is our position is a sideshow to what is happening.
Sure.
It doesn't really matter what position we adopt because we're not actual players in either the combat or the political situation. I think the fact that the Prime Minister was there on the eve of these strikes, the earlier statements from Prime Minister Netanyahu, and generally the trend which has been there for the past few years, suggests that while we may make pro forma voice comments about what is happening and convey our anguish and call for restraint by all sides, in fact, we are stepping back from this situation and let events take their own course in terms of the actual parties to the conflict deciding what is to be done. We are basically opting out of this situation. Whether it's a good thing or not, what it does to our standing as a major player in global affairs, those are all questions for the future. But for the time being, I don't see us being a major factor in this.
Let me get last comments from both of you now. General Hassan, there are reports, again, you have spoken about the fog of war. Such a narrative battle on. Iran is saying 40 schoolgirls have been killed in these strikes in a primary school. 36, some reports, 40 other reports. Again, there is absolutely no way for us to verify any claims anywhere. At this point, that is the situation. So with that health warning, this is Iran's official media saying that this is what has happened. I agree with Ambassador Raghavan, not much for us to immediately do or say in this conflict, but are we impacted by it in terms of the general stability in the region? And we haven't spoken about it today. I thought we'd be speaking about that this morning, and then the news changed. What's happening between Pakistan and Afghanistan?
On the first part, Barkha, in fact, Ambassador Raghavan is the better person to talk about it. I think there are three issues primarily about the Middle East that concern us. First of all is the 9.5 million Indian citizens who are working there and their security and safety, their potential return. I mean, bringing 9.5 million people back is something which is unimaginable as such, and I don't think this situation will ever come to that. But having said that, $50 billion or plus of remittances which come from there. And third thing is the energy. 80% of India's energy is imported and 60% of the overall energy comes from this area. So obviously we are looking for stability. We are looking for secure lines of communication and sea lanes being open, the Straits of Hormuz remaining open, otherwise escalating oil prices, energy prices, everything is going to cause major problems, not only for India, but for Japan, China, and countries of that nature. So this is a major concern for us. As far as the Pakistan-Afghanistan conflict is concerned, I know this question is coming up repeatedly and a lot of people are discussing it. I'm not seeing a major connect between the two situations there at the moment. The Americans have backed the Pakistanis. That is one thing which is there. They've actually backed them completely for their retaliation against the Taliban. Now, obviously, it's very odd that it is the United States which supports the Taliban financially for them to survive and keep their heads above water, and at the same time also looks at degrading them from time to time. So this is a very awkward kind of a situation. I am not finding any potential solutions to it at the moment. Whether this is good for India or bad for India, I would say any turbulence in Afghanistan is always bad for us. There are ways by which the ripples which are caused by events in Afghanistan inevitably somehow travel to us. So Ambassador Raghavan will be the better person to give a judgment on that, but that is my take on it.
So let me give you the last word, Ambassador Raghavan, with a sort of double-barreled question. One, how does Trump extricate himself, not that we know the answer to that necessarily, from a situation where there is no regime change, and the Iranians come to the table, and then you have a prolonged, sort of long-winded dialogue process, and then the world kind of moves on and forgets that this happened. That's question one. Question two, General Hussain said he doesn't see the connection, Pakistan-Afghanistan, what Pakistan will do vis-a-vis this situation. It is a tenuous connection, but let me try and ask my question. Pakistan clearly is trying to build a certain coziness with Washington using flattery and whatever else at its disposal. But Pakistan has domestic political compulsions as well. If the Americans want to use Pakistan, if this is a prolonged conflict with Iran, Pakistan will have to take a decision on that. Can it overtly support the American attack, Israel's attack on Iran? Or how is it going to respond? It has a very serious situation in Balochistan. It has this situation with Afghanistan at its border. So I'm just trying to wrap my head around everything that's happening. So last word to you.
I think in terms of what is going to happen in Iran, I think if at the end of the next 4 to 5 days we see Iran even more significantly weakened than it is already, I would say that would be a outcome with which the United States and Israel will walk away from reasonably satisfied and let things pend then till the next.
But what would they say? But what would they say? They'd have to say something. Oh, we weakened Iran. That's what they said a year ago.
We weakened them. We have sent a message. The people of Iran know that we stand with them, etc., etc. But everything doesn't have to be forced to a linear conclusion. Certainly, that would be one aspect of U.S. thinking, in my understanding. Nobody can quite predict U.S. and Israeli behavior nowadays. So we have to wait and see. I think on the Pakistan-Afghanistan situation, frankly, I don't see much connection between the two. I think the two are pretty self-contained. The Pakistan-Afghanistan situation was heading towards a crisis for some weeks. Something like this was going to happen. There again, I think the Pakistan-Afghanistan situation will end with an even less clear outcome. I don't think we are going to see the Taliban significantly weakened because of this. In fact, it may emerge even the stronger. I was told that ex-President Karzai and many other leaders of the earlier government have come out condemning Pakistani behavior and supporting the Taliban regime in the present moment. So the Taliban government may come out significantly stronger. What Pakistan would have achieved, one doesn't quite know, but certainly there must have been a sense over there that they had to act because it was just getting intolerable, the kind of attacks they were facing from the TTP. But I see the Afghanistan-Pakistan situation as being a much more intense but still kinetic and tactical phase. I don't think anything new is going to emerge from this latest bout of combat which is taking place. I think the problem is that again, we are in that kind of situation with Pakistan where history reaches a turning point but refuses to turn. For the past 2 or 3 years, there are enough indications that Pakistan's neighborhood policy is collapsing vis-a-vis India, vis-a-vis Afghanistan, vis-a-vis Iran. But they seem to lack the bandwidth to introspect and bring about a kind of policy change or slight policy shift. I think that till that happens, we are just going to see this continuing. And let's not forget, all of this means that Pakistan's internal economic and political situation gets that much more fragile.
Well, all I can say is that the bottom line is we live in extremely uncertain times. I think both of you are speaking about bursts of conflict with no clear conclusions, no necessarily clear conclusions, both in Israel, Iran, as well as Pakistan, Afghanistan. And yes, uncertain times. We live in a Trumpian age. That adds to the uncertainty. We leave it there. Thank you very much for helping us try to make sense of it all. General Hassan, Ambassador Raghavan, and earlier to our guest from Israel, Helit Parel. Thank you very much. And everybody have a great, and I think it's time to say safe weekend. See you soon.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.